I was not happy about the reelection of Mitch McConnell. I really wasn't, and I think that was very obvious because I stated that in the episode that we had post election. Um, but I will say that I am glad about something related to Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has finally admitted something that I think, um, if you have not believed it based on his actions, which, mind you, I say all the time, look, oh my, I promise you guys, put, I have an iPhone, and on the side, I put the flap thing down so I see the red, so it was silent, and I still forgot that I had an alarm. And I turned off my Outlook. I closed it. I was like, okay, I'm surely not going to get any interruptions during this episode. And lo and behold, again, I forgot that I set an alarm on my phone. I am the worst. I am the absolute worst. But no, really, let's actually get back to talking about the worst, right? And that worst is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, again, I have made no qualms, and I've made no. It's not been a secret how I have felt about the man, right? And I've come a long way because I've actually just called him a man. Um, Despite I wanted to call him some other form of a creature that you might hear a lot of other people refer to him as. But I'm feeling nice today and pretty friendly, so I am going to leave that alone. So Mitch McConnell, though, to his credit, he has finally been honest about something, and I think that we all need to hear it and acknowledge it because I've said all the time that people need to look at what people do and not just what they say. If you have been looking at what Mitch McConnell has been doing, you've been pretty clear about what he actually has just said. But for those who've refused to look at his actions or just not really know how to interpret his actions, I want you to be very, very clear about what he's actually now being clear about. Mitch McConnell is finally being clear about the fact and admitting that he has not been serious about stimulus. He has not been serious about stimulus. He said this, and I quote, "But I do think there needs to be another package. Hopefully, we can get past the impasse we've had now for 4 or 5 months and get serious." End quote. So, if a person says that they need to get serious, that means that previously they weren't serious, and I applaud Mitch for that. I think that it's a noble thing, in politics. It's, again, especially because optics and perception are like a big thing. It's a very big move for this man to get to a point where he is willing to openly admit that, I haven't been doing my job to this point. I haven't been serious. So, I applaud him because I'm sure it was a tough decision to finally make that admission and actually say, you know what, I'm willing to try now. I'm willing to actually do this. I'm willing to get serious. So, speaking of what people are saying, let me share with you something that Nancy Pelosi said. And I quote, "It has been our position all along to crush the virus, honor our heroes, put money in the pockets of the American people. This is what we put in the Heroes Act to crush the virus." End quote. Look, this is what I have to say. We, especially in previous months, because it's been months since we had the Heroes Act passed, right? At least in the House of Representatives. I mentioned in the previous segment that what Republicans have been arguing when we talk about their opposition to the other side, they've been arguing on the basis of the other side wanting a larger package, right? They've been arguing about the scope of the package. But something, when I look at pundits who have the opportunity to interview these politicians, even though, to their credit, Mitch McConnell has been in hiding, based on who and what I say he is, I do want to make a joke about where I think he's been hiding, but I'm not going to do that because, again, I am feeling quite lovely and peachy today, despite the fact that 150,000 plus of my freaking fellow Americans are out there contracting COVID when they don't have to, right? I tell my 2-year-old nephew, that is not okay, Anthony, and I'm telling all of you, that is not okay. So Anyhow, I see people who have been in a position to interview opposition to specifically the Heroes Act. They never really push back. And if they do push back, they push back where the politicians are. And again, where Republicans are is they are on the argument of, well, it's too big and I want to talk about money. Okay, but you know what? If you want to talk about money, let's talk about that money being spent. What specifically do you oppose? Like, I want you to be very specific about what it is that you oppose in the Heroes Act. We know one that they were very, willing to admit, for instance, was I don't want to give money to states and local governments because they are awful states and local governments that, don't manage their funds well and they were poorly managed. Okay. I'm not saying that I agree with that, but I will say this. Past that argument, typically what happens is the pundits who were able to ask that question and then go along with that line of questioning, they get stuck on that question. Like, literally what needs to happen is we need to have people say, okay, you disagree with that. What else do you disagree with? What else do you want to have a list of things that are in the Heroes Act? Okay, we do hear about their opposition to things that may benefit certain industries, such as like the cannabis industry. If you notice, they pick out things that they can kind of play to their base, right? But especially when you consider, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, how recent proposals that have come from the Republicans do not include a $1,200 stimulus check. Notice that just kind of disappeared. They didn't want to talk about that. They did not want to talk about that. Why? Because they understand that a lot of their constituents actually need that $1,200. $1,200 that, mind you, wouldn't be enough for some people. Actually, for most people. Considering how long we've been going at this and how far behind many Americans are on basic bills, $1,200 would be like literally they'd get the check at 12 o'clock. By 1, 2, maybe 3 o'clock, that money would be gone. What specifically is it that they oppose outside of government and state funding, outside of stuff related to the cannabis bill? Okay, we see you obviously don't want $1,200 checks. Make them defend that. If they don't want to give money to our healthcare heroes and give hazard pay, make them defend that. Put these people on blast on TV, on the radio, make them defend their positions. This is how they can prance around and they can continue to oppose in secret because they don't have to defend in public. The second they start have to publicly defend popular things, even things that are popular among their base, that is when what happens in private will be transformed. But because it's not having to be explained in public, they can just deny in private. Push back on the specifics. You want a smaller number in the Heroes Act? What are you willing to cut? Even if they're not willing to talk about it in the Senate, when you get them on TV, when you get them on the record, ask about it. Ask about specifics. Make them defend their position. It bothers me again, and I literally say this at every episode. I am not some champion of Nancy Pelosi. I don't really care for the woman, but she, to her credit, has had to defend it. She always is having to defend her decision to want to help the American people. But we never see these people looking to not help the American people. They never have to defend their position. And if they do, it's a softball kind of thing because, of course, we want them to come back for future interviews. So we don't want to say anything to them. But do you not understand, people, that they want, just as much as you want them back, they also want a platform to be able to come back and talk to their base on TV. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Recognize your power. And if all of these companies and platforms and media companies can get on the same page and not try to coddle these people like we're coddling COVID in chief, Donald, it's okay. You lost the election. How long are we going to stroke this man's back? Tell him to stroke it all the way out the White House. You got to go. Time to go. He worked in real estate. Give him an eviction notice. Put it on the door. Let him know, yo, you got this is your notice to vacate. Let's talk to him in his language. He's in real estate. He hasn't understood. He has, understood. Whoa. He has not understood our electoral process. Okay. He wanted to run on being this outsider of politics. Okay. So let's not talk to him in political lingo. Let's talk to him in real estate lingo. He understands real estate. Somebody go put a 3-day notice on his door. Well, he has more than 3 days, but give him a notice to vacate. Put it on the door. He will understand that. That is the lane he is in. Let's stick to him. Let's talk to him in his own lane. He will understand that. Anywho, that is not what I was talking about. Let me make it clear. Let me get back to talking about Mitch McConnell. Okay. Mitch McConnell, I said before, he has removed, and again, you probably didn't know this, not only because he didn't publicly talk about this, but you really don't hear people who get the opportunity. Again, he has been in hiding, so I will give outlets that Mitch McConnell has been in hiding. Could be some health-related issue, especially if you've seen his hands, right? His hands are literally purple. And I know that people who, for instance, get certain health conditions, especially those related to like loss of oxygen, one of the things that happens is they start getting discoloration in extremities. But I am not a medical professional, so I'm going to leave that alone. So Mitch McConnell, though, he has, again, behind the scenes, because he's not been publicly accountable for it, he has removed his current proposals, and I'm talking about Mitch McConnell because he is their leader, right? Dear leader, the great man, the great one is bombarded. He is hiding in a legal camp in the White House, right? He is about to start squatting, right? So we can't talk about, COVID in chief because we are trying to coax him out of his squatting situation. And he's too emotionally unstable at this point. But so when it comes to Mitch McConnell, though, we're talking about him because he's the leadership. He literally is the political leader on the right at this point. And so he pulled out of his current proposals what he wants to do to help our economy. It does not include giving Americans a measly, because let's call it what it is, a measly, super bestest, dumbest measly $1,200 single one-time check for Americans who have had to endure this for months, who have gone without assistance for months, who are deciding between, in the words of myself, it is not okay. So, anywho, he has pulled this out of kind of what he's proposing. He does not want more stimulus checks, okay? What he wants trickle-down stimulus. He wants a stimulus where we cut a check to companies, and companies get that money and they will somehow make it rain upon the American people. Trickle-down economics does not work in the type of economy that we have, okay? Let me explain something to you. We've had several people at this point, several wealthy people, several business people talk about this. They've been honest about this, and it's amazing. And it actually speaks to their values and their morals, especially because when you look at what they can benefit from the system as it currently is set up, the fact that they speak out against the establishment should be to their credit. But quite frankly, what we've had a situation, or let me put it like this. You can't have a situation where you give a business money, right? Now, mind you, you don't know if that business would have been around. You don't know if that business, like there for instance, especially when early on we were talking about specifically helping out the hospitality industry and specifically hotels. I, in one episode, spoke in depth about how hotels, for instance, have really been negatively impacted. Their business model has suffered as a result of evolution with that industry and another industry that kind of runs like parallel to it. And that's, well, not even an industry, but like a really big business. You probably heard of it, Airbnb. right? And we've seen in this economy how obviously hotels have been around, and but they've been impacted by change. It's kind of like, just think of like what was that, Blockbuster. Used to go there on Fridays with my mom and get like movies that like we'd take until Sunday, and like, but they ultimately, they had to change, and eventually they went out of business. Right now, I'm not saying that hotels are going out of business, but they've got to do something and figure out something for their business model. But here we have people, because they are so beholden, we have Congress people that are so beholden to people that donate from them, these industries that really donate to their reelection campaigns. So these Congress people have fought tooth and nail for these companies, these specific companies, to go ahead and get assistance, but they like literally did not talk at all about how these companies, these industries were dying anyways. So we've propped them up. Maybe this was literally the nail in the coffin that they needed, that really propelled them to make the changes that they needed. But you didn't want to do that because you just wanted to throw a check at them. Like, and it boggles my mind, because they literally had a problem, and they literally demonized Americans for making more money on unemployment in some cases than they did before they were unemployed through no fault of their own. But they didn't demonize businesses in that same, well, they were dying anyways. What happened to the free freaking market? But look, we can't have a situation where we give businesses money, and sure, they can operate, they can keep their people on payroll, but and it cracks me up. I literally just kind of thought about something. We think about how, for instance, we want Americans to go out there and get jobs because we don't want them depending on daddy government, right? They need to be self-sufficient. We don't argue the same thing for business. These, without customers, no matter if you're talking B2B, business to business, or business to consumer, ultimately we have a consumer-based economy. If you have a business, for instance, that sells directly to your average everyday consumers, if that consumer doesn't have money, even if the government is giving that business money, unless the government is going to continue to give that business money, they are at some point going to need average everyday consumers. And if consumers don't have money, it doesn't matter how much money daddy government is giving those businesses. Even if it's not a B2C company and it's a B2B, like, a wholesale or something like that, ultimately, if the business that if business A, the supplier, doesn't is giving is selling to business B, the purchaser who actually goes and gives stuff to consumer and sells directly to consumers, yeah, they're B2B, but if business B, who actually deals directly with consumers, starts having their business negatively impacted by this COVID-19 shenanigans that we're allowing to run rampant, when we've decided that it is okay to allow 150,000 Americans plus a day get COVID-19, which is not okay. When these businesses, when the businesses they are actually selling to start noticing a decline in their actual consumer base, then you have B2Bs impacted. So we can't sit up here and act like we have this economy where we can just help businesses and do nothing for consumers. We cannot do that. Even if you have, just say, I don't know, Bob's Building Company, and the government says, we're going to give Bob's Building Company, we're going to pay 100% of his employees' wages so he can keep every employee, there at the company. Okay, that's great. But you know what? Unless that company has consumers, either daddy government is going to have to continue to go ahead and continue the corporate welfare, because that's what it is, corporate welfare, or they're going to have to just let people go, because if the government cuts off, its supply, they have no money to pay people. So you literally have to help consumers. Let me tell you something. And I mentioned how politicians and even pundits use psychology, for instance, when they determine when they specifically focus on the linguistics that they use, the language that they use when they either communicate or talk about certain things. Think about this. Do you know why some people prefer to help businesses? I mean, even if they don't themselves have businesses, do you know why they decide to do that? Think about it from the government's perspective. They're going to have to help you either way, right? If you don't have a job, you're going to have to get on some form of government assistance, most likely. If you don't have like a portfolio or savings to fall back on, you're going to need food assistance, so on and so forth. So you're going to need public assistance, or they're going to have to help your employer. But if they help your employer, there's the psychology of you feeling security that you otherwise would not feel if you had to directly depend on the government. Think of it as kind of like a wholesaler type relationship. Instead of the government coming and directly helping you, they're using the middleman of an employer by giving the money to the employer. When they're helping you either way, then there's also the control that you gain if they help you versus the control that they have, again, through the psychological programming of, I have security because I have a job. This stuff is deep, man. When you really understand what's going on, this stuff is deep. You've got to open your freaking eyes. Open your freaking eyes. Because even when they try and frame it as, oh, we're helping businesses, they're actually helping you, but indirectly through the businesses. They just don't want to help you directly.